Welcome to I'm on a Nonprofit Board, Now What? The legal governance lowdown for nonprofit board members and leaders, so you can come to the table ready to lead. Whether you are new to a nonprofit board or have been serving for years, this information will help you confidently take your seat at the board table and continue to make a positive impact in our community. Powered by attorney volunteers, Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio strengthens our community by providing free business legal services and education to nonprofits. Links to more information about us and to additional resources on this topic are at the end of this presentation. Checking the boxes, state and federal compliance. We discuss what filings a 501c3 Ohio nonprofit must make to remain compliant with state and federal laws. Here's an overview of what we'll be covering today. At the federal level, a nonprofit must file a Form 990 with the Internal Revenue Service. At the state level, it must file with the Ohio Secretary of State and the Ohio Attorney General. We'll go into each of these in more detail, but first, keep in mind these are the minimum and most common federal and state requirements. Your nonprofit may have others depending on how you carry out your mission. Now let's dig into each of these requirements. If a nonprofit has received tax-exempt status from the Internal Revenue Service, it must allow the IRS and the public to peek behind the curtains of the nonprofit. This is done with Form 990, an informational tax return that is filed annually. The Form 990 provides a snapshot of a nonprofit's financial health, governance practices, and how well it is fulfilling its mission. Because the public can see the Form 990, it's a useful tool for individuals and donors to evaluate your nonprofit when considering whether they want to commit resources or time to your nonprofit. The specific form to use depends on your gross income and total assets, and ranges from a long form to an electronic postcard. If you fail to file your 990 for 3 years, the IRS will automatically revoke your tax-exempt status. Now let's turn to filings required at the state level. When a nonprofit first incorporates in Ohio, it files initial articles of incorporation with the Ohio Secretary of State. The articles state the name, principal office, and most important, the purpose for which the nonprofit is formed. For the most part, articles are filed and then put on a shelf as the nonprofit gets its legs, grows, and adapts over time. The most common reasons a nonprofit may need to amend its articles are when it changes its name and when it changes its mission. Any changes to the Articles of Incorporation must be filed with the Ohio Secretary of State. The Ohio Secretary of State's acceptance of a nonprofit's initial articles and granting the nonprofit the right to do business in Ohio doesn't last indefinitely. An Ohio nonprofit must periodically verify that it continues to exist by filing a Statement of Continued Existence with the Ohio Secretary of State every 5 years. If your nonprofit fails to file, the Secretary of State will cancel your charter and you will no longer have permission to conduct business in Ohio. While the charter can be reinstated, it's best not to let this happen in the first place. If you're unsure when your nonprofit's next filing is due, you can always check the Secretary of State's website. The Secretary of State sends a reminder to the nonprofit's statutory agent, which we'll cover next. When your nonprofit first incorporated in Ohio, it had to provide the name of a statutory agent to the Ohio Secretary of State. The statutory agent is the person or entity responsible for receiving and sharing with the nonprofit notification of any lawsuits filed against the nonprofit, other legal notices, and state correspondence. Over time, the leaders and board members of your nonprofit may move or change, and you will likely find the need to change the statutory agent. It's important to make note to change the statutory agent name and address anytime there's a change in your organization. Not maintaining a current statutory agent could result in failing to respond to litigation or missing an important filing date and cancellation of the nonprofit's right to conduct business in Ohio. An Ohio statutory agent can be a person who is an Ohio resident or an entity that can do business in Ohio. As a best practice, choose a person that is reliable and that will still be associated with the organization and not likely to move in the next 5 years. Finally, Ohio nonprofits are also required to file a one-time registration and then submit annual reports to the Ohio Attorney General. The Ohio Attorney General regulates nonprofits and aims to increase accountability and transparency within the charitable sector. Nonprofits that intend to solicit donations in Ohio must register on the Ohio Attorney General's online portal prior to engaging in these activities and annually thereafter. This requirement applies whether or not the nonprofit actually receives any donations. Check with the Ohio Attorney General's website to register your organization and to confirm that your organization is listed as compliant. The deadline for the annual report is the 15th day of the 5th month from the end of the nonprofit's fiscal year. If your nonprofit fiscal year ends December 31st, the annual report is due on May 15th. As a side note, be aware that your nonprofit may be required to register in other states if it solicits donations in those states. But that's a topic for another seminar. Let's recap the basic things an Ohio nonprofit must do to stay compliant with state and federal law. These are: file a Form 990 with the IRS annually, keep a statement of continued existence with the Ohio Secretary of State every 5 years, keep your statutory agent up to date with the Ohio Secretary of State. If revisions are made to the Article of Incorporation, file with the Ohio Secretary of State. Register for charitable solicitation with the Ohio Attorney General every year. It's a good idea to review governing documents from time to time and to keep a calendar of deadlines with several people in your nonprofit so due dates are not missed. Keep in mind that a nonprofit is considered a business, just like any other corporation. So it's important for nonprofit leaders to understand and remain compliant with applicable laws. In fact, nonprofits face special scrutiny because of their position of trust within the community, and especially if they have tax-exempt status. Pro Bono Partnership of Ohio is here to help. We regularly help nonprofits stay compliant by amending articles of incorporation, updating statutory agents, and advising on charitable solicitation registration. And our legal help is free. See below to see if you qualify for our services, and fill out our simple request for legal services today.